Welcome back, game developers. Today we are extending our multi-part series for our inventory system for our first-person character. The primary focus of this tutorial is to fix a couple of mistakes I made previously, improve some quality of life changes, and of course implement the final combined system to craft new items. This video may be a bit of a longer one because of how many things we are going to be implementing, so I'll make sure to put timestamps and sections showing exactly what we are focusing on in each part. Lastly, it would be appreciated if you guys would like, subscribe, and comment down below more videos you guys like to see in the future. But before we get started, if you would like to support me, get all the files you're seeing today and from every other tutorial I've done, get early access to videos, as well as see your name along with the other people here, I have a link for my Patreon down below. Alright, with that being said, let's get right into the tutorial. But just before we do, I do want to give a special shout out and thank you to all of these different resources that I did use for this. So if you do want to download and credit the realistic icons that I used, we are going to be using these two for, as you've seen, the shop, or where you combine things, you can craft things. So we use two of these. In the freesound.org, I have this sound that we use when we actually craft an icon, or sorry, craft an item, which you can hear right there. And then we have the three different items that we use to show off crafting. So we have a herb from Nicola Hines, we have a plastic container, and we have this gunpowder right here that we are also using. So I just wanted to show them off really quickly before we get started. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to actually make it so we have a little bit more modularity with our items. So let's go into our first person folder, into our blueprints, and let's create a new folder and let's call it items. And right here is where we will store all of our items that we can use in our level. So for example, let's right click our base item. Let's right click it. Let's create a child blueprint. Let's call it BP_bandage. We can drag that into items. Let's create another. We'll call it BP_chemfluid. And we can do another BP_, let's see, gunpowder. Another child, BP_herb. And by the way, if you are just following along and you're new to this series, we have a multi-part series, a three-part series in our on the channel, which can show you exactly how we got here to begin with. It shows you step by step. So, and then the last one we'll do BP_pills. And so all of these will be basically what we can place whenever we want to have pills, gunpowder, whatever it is. So let's drag all of these. So we have gunpowder, herb, pills, and it wasn't medkit. Medkit was one of, oh, chem fluid right here. So let's drag them all into items right here. And let's open this up. Now each of these different blueprints are going to have different, if you look at them, let's open them up and bring them over here and we can minimize these. On the right, you'll see that all of these have different parameters. So in my other project, I have the exact parameters that we're going to use. So let me open those right now. So, okay, let's copy these settings. So we have that the item location will be about 20 above. We have will be 100, 200, and it's a little bit of a smaller item. So we'll make this scale 8 by 8 by 8, and we won't make it debug or inspect. Let's go down and let's name it and give it a description. So let's name it bandage, and then I'll copy and paste mine right here into this description. Basically, use when hurt or injured will only slightly heal you. That's all I have right there. I'm going to say it is stackable. I'm going to say the amount is 1. And in a minute, we're going to give the meshes and images. So before we do that, let's also just do it's healable and it does 10 health. And we'll say that it is inspectable as well. It starts like that. And the scale will be 10 by 10 by 10. So let's just do that by 10. Perfect. Now let's also save this and compile. Let's go back to our chem fluid and let's do the same exact thing here. So let's go into here and I'll open that up to see all of the settings for this. So similarly, it's going to be a 45 height. So this will all stay the same. This is going to be 2 now. We're going to go down to item name. It'll be chem fluid. The description will be combined with other items to create useful items. Pretty self-explanatory. We'll make it stackable. We'll make the item amount 1 and the mesh and the image we'll add in a moment. This by itself won't be healable, so we don't need to include a healable amount. It will be inspectable, so let's just keep it like this. We can make it 1.5 on each dimension. And this is all we need for now. We can compile and save. Let's do gunpowder now, and not too many left. And of course, you can also add these for whatever items that you want to implement. So 45, excuse me. We'll do these, will stay the same. The item scale will be 0.1. This is a little bit of a bigger item. Let's do that. Let's change it so the item inventory stays like this. We can do a gunpowder. We can say used to craft ammo. Right, and we'll say that it is stackable. There's 1 per, and the item mesh and image we'll add later on. Let's do that it is not healable, so no healing amount. It is inspectable, and we'll just keep all of this the same. And let's go back. Now we're going to do herb. So let's go to herb and 45 all across, 1, good. And so we'll do herb. And I think this one is, again, it uses used to heal you slightly, can combine with other items. So we'll keep it like this. We'll say it's 1 each time. And again, we'll add that later. It is healable. It heals 15 each time. And yeah, this is good. So we can compile and save. And then lastly, we have pills. So pills are just similarly like the other ones. They're going to be 20 above because it is a smaller item, 100, 200, and let's make it 0.03. This one's a really big item when you first bring it in from Sketchfab. So we're gonna have to make it a little bit smaller for us. We're gonna make sure that it's called pills, and I think I have a longer thing here, but it's basically just an empty pill container. Seems like it's been there for a while. Just some typical stuff. We'll say that it is 1 item amount and it's not stackable, just so we have a little bit of variation. We'll say that it's not healable by default, and we'll say that the scale is 0.1 across the board. Great, so we can compile and save, and now we have different items. So for these items, we can replace all of these. So now we have pills that we can place here, and it's going to take on this instead. Now that we have pills and bandages already in the level, we can actually import these two right here. So what we'll do is we'll take the bandage, and if you don't know where that is, we can go to it. So it's in content, meshes, and bandage. Right here we have the bandage mesh. And if we go to meshes and we go to pills, we also have the pills mesh. So first we'll go to bandage, grab the bandage mesh, go back up to where we have BP_bandage, and make sure that we use this mesh right here. Additionally, I think we can look up bandage right here, and we have the bandage cover image. Now I'm not sure that's the one that I use in the last final edition, so let me just make sure right now. I'm pretty sure it's not the item image, so I'll just erase that one. We'll bring in all of ours. I will also leave a Google Drive download below if you haven't seen that already, where you can download all of the item images that I made and all of the UI elements that I made as well. So we'll put that in a moment. Let's go back, and I think we also have the pills already imported. So we'll grab the pill one and we'll go to BP_pills and set that as the item mesh as well. Great, so now we have both of those set up. So if we go into here and if we go back to content, first person, blueprints, items, and now the pills, we can place it down like so, and you can see it's just the same thing as this one. So what we'll do is we'll delete all of these. And now we have every single time we want to place a pill, we have a pill right here. And you can also, of course, make a variation of this one if you want to, where it's a duplicate, except maybe it's only inspect, and whatever you'd like to do. You can do whatever you'd like, and this just makes it a little bit cleaner for us and makes it so it's way more obvious what everything is. So here's what we'll do. Oh, don't delete that. We can delete this out of the level though. So we'll place these back. We'll place a bunch of these just for example purposes, and we'll bring them all up so they're not in the ground. And additionally, we'll do the same for the bandages. So we will just click on all of these and replace with BP_bandage, which now should be this one right here. Yes, it is. Great. So we have all of those. We'll save. All right, now adding on top of this, let's start modularizing our UI and creating the combine UI. But before we do that, let's finish up what we're doing now. So first thing we want to do is go to our first person folder and make sure we go into our inventory folder and into our textures folder right here. So these are all the textures that we have previously. What we need to do now is we need to create a couple new folders to hold the new textures we're going to be adding. So the first one we want to name combine textures. After that, we want to create another one, and let's call it item textures. And then the last one we're just going to import here. So let me grab the files that we're actually going to be importing. All right, so I've just imported all of the files that I think we need for textures. So all of these files I either made or got online. So these two I showed earlier, I got them from a resource, but all of the other ones I made from just making screenshots of all of them. So let's go into them first. What we can do is we can select all of them and right click, and we want to asset actions. We want to go to asset actions, and we want to go to edit selection in property matrix. You can see right now we're going to go into a couple of different things that we're going to be editing with them. Firstly, we want to change the texture group to be a UI right here, and then we want to change the compression setting to be user interface, and that'll change it for all of them, which will make it a lot easier for us. Now we'll save all of this, and we can close this, and now you'll see all of them will look the way they're supposed to. So if you're a little confused, this combined background is what is going to be powering the UI. This is going to be the background of the UI for the combined section, and all of the other ones are what we're going to use for all of the items. These two are for our shop items for our combine. When we have things in our inventory, we could try to craft these items. So what we'll do is now just a little bit of housekeeping. Let's go to the one that we had previously, the bandage cover image right here, and we'll delete this. So what we'll do is we'll just delete, and we'll say we don't care that it's used, you just want to force delete it. And then we want to go to meshes again and go to pills and force delete this one as well, because we have better ones. So we'll delete that as well. And so now we shouldn't have any more of these, I don't believe. So that's all good. Now we're going to go back to our first person, our blueprints, our items, and now we want to set these images. So like I said before, we'll go to item bg underscore, and right now we're in the bandage, so underscore bandage. We can compile and save. Go to chem fluid, and we'll do the same. We have to import the mesh, but for now let's do item bg underscore chem fluid. We can compile and save. Same thing for gunpowder, item bg underscore gunpowder, compile and save. Herb, item bg underscore herb, compile and save. And then pills, we'll go item bg underscore pills, like so. And now let's actually go into importing our meshes, just so we have all of this taken care of. All right, so luckily we already have some of the meshes. So let's go into our first person folder, or I'm sorry, I think it's, yeah, I'm going to our content folder, go to meshes, and let's create the folders for our new items. So we have a herb, we have chem fluid, and we also have gunpowder. So let's add those. And let's go into herb first. So what I'll do, just like we do always, I'm just going to drag in the FBX from the Sketchfab link. So if you want to get that, go to that Sketchfab link and you can grab the file as well. I'll just press import here, and let me go back to get all of the textures. Here are the textures. So now I have all of them, and I'll speed this up because you guys have seen this 100 times how to set this up, but I'll do it very quickly. And all right, now this is set up. So what we'll do is, I don't think we need that one. So I'll apply and save. I think we go back, and now you can see we have the herb just like so. So now we have the herb. Let's go back and let's do the same thing for the gunpowder. And so I'll go and grab that right now. So I have the FBX file. We'll do the same thing, import, and that's okay no matter what it says right there. So we'll have that, and it didn't create the texture, but that's okay. We'll create it in a second. And let's do this just like so. And of course, you guys don't have to get these same exact files as me. If you guys have, I don't know, different gunpowder and herbs and whatever you like, you don't have to have mine. You can do yours as well. Great, so now we have this set up. So we'll just go into here, grab m underscore gunpowder cap, and same thing, now that's set up. So now we have the gunpowder cap and the gunpowder jar. So now what else do we need? We could do chem fluid. Let me grab that right now. And all right, I just found it. So we have, this one is for the chem fluid that I found online. So again, I'll do the same exact thing. I'll import, and I'll grab the materials again. And so here we have this, which is fine. Oh, it seems like it already added it, which is perfect. So we have that. Now make sure it looks okay. It does. That's exactly how it looks. Okay, cool. So we have that as well. So we can close some of these because most of them are basically done now. Let's close this, close this, close this.
And so that's chem fluid. Now let's go in and we can actually add the chem fluid. But before we do that, let's make sure we name it sm underscore chem fluid. And similarly, let's do the same for the other one, sm underscore gun powder. And let's go to bandage and pills. Should already have that. Herb, sm underscore green herb. That's fine. Are there any others, or is that the last one? I think that's the last one, which is great. We'll also rename this sm underscore bandage just to keep consistency, and sm underscore pills. And SM stands for static mesh, if you guys were not aware. Okay, so now we have all of them. So let's set it right here. So we'll go sm underscore chem fluid. Perfect. And we can compile and save. And now you can see it looks like that right there. Let's go right here. So that already has it. So we can compile and save and close that one. This one has it as well. So we can save and close that one. Gunpowder, sm underscore gun powder. We can compile and save that one and close. Herb right here. We can do sm underscore, I think it's green herb. And we can compile and save. And then pills already has it as well. So that's perfect. So we have that fixed now. So whenever we want to use any of these, we could, instead of having it how we did it before, we can go to content, go to first person, our inventory, or not inventory, sorry, it's blueprints, then items, and then place as many bandages as we would like. And that is how we can have a lot of different bandages and make sure that the structs are exactly the same. So now we don't have to worry about the structs being different and something happening with our inventory, because now they'll always be the same. So yeah, that's one fix and it's done. All right, so the next thing we want to do for our tutorial series is we want to modularize our inventory so that we can have a inventory part and a combined part. So this will be a little bit confusing, a little bit. So let's just make sure we do this the right way and make sure that we kind of save ourselves in the end. So the first thing we want to do is let's duplicate this w underscore inventory grid. Let's duplicate that and let's do w underscore inventory just so we have a backup. And this is what it will eventually be called. But okay, let's go into, let me make sure. Yes, okay. Let's go into w underscore inventory grid now, because this will be the main basic container. So all we want here really is we want to have, if we open up both, one of these will actually be our inventory and the other one will be our inventory grid. And basically that's just our parent container. So for our inventory grid, let's add a new component and we want it to be called switcher, or a switch widget switcher. Here it is. So let's add that to our canvas panel and let's put it all the way to the top. Okay, and let's call it switcher. And let's make sure it is a variable, which it is. So perfect. So now upon this, we want to have two different widgets. So we can look them up. Well, we have the one right now, which is w underscore inventory, and we can add it right there. And it'll look like this for a second, but just ignore that. And then let's add another one and we'll call it w underscore combine. And this will be our combine widget. And so let's make sure that we go and add that one as well in the inventory grid. Make sure you're looking at which tab I have open so you don't get confused. Let's do w underscore combine now. And let's add that to the switcher as well. So you should be an inventory grid and you should have inventory and combine widgets parented or as children to the parent switcher. Great, so let's combine or compile that. The next thing we want to do is we want to go into w underscore inventory and let's make sure that everything is the way that it should be. So firstly, let's make sure we have it as inventory first. So let's put inventory up here. Then we'll have the grid overlay and then we'll have the inventory border. So just looking at my other project to reference to make sure everything is the way that it should be. Let me just make sure, because there are a lot of moving parts in this and I don't want to say the wrong thing and confuse all of you guys. So this looks all good. So this is what it's going to be here, but we have to change a couple of things, particularly up here with the screen size. We want this to be the same, but we want fill screen to be now desired on screen. All right, so after we change it to be desired on screen, there's a couple things we're gonna have to change in order for the canvas panel to fit directly around this. So firstly, let's make sure we go to our inventory overlay right here. Let's make sure the position X is 0. Make sure it's anchored to the top left. Make sure all of this is correct. Yes. Let's go to our wrap box, and our wrap box should be 25.0.25.0, which is perfect. That's exactly what it is. Let's make sure we go to our grid overlay now.
And the grid overlay should be 0. And we need to make sure that it's parented to the top left rather. So this should be 0. And then now we want the position X to be 40, 450, and 400. Yep, that's all right. And so now let's go to our grid. Our grid should be zeroed out, which is perfect. And all of this should also be correct. So now if we go to our inventory border, this should again be anchored to the top left. This should be 0 now. And as you can see, now it's a perfect like rectangle like your cell phone. So we want to also make sure the position Y is -30, just like so that it's a little bit of a gap in between, and this makes it look a little bit better on our actual screen. So, and let's also make the size 930 so that it does this on the bottom. I believe I moved the text and stuff like that. Let me see. Right, so with this top text, I have the padding as 20 and 630 now. Just like so. And for this bottom description, I have it as 2700 for the extra 30 that we added, and then 20 and then 100, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. And so let's compile and save. And now this is our inventory. Our inventory looks great. That's what our inventory will be. And right now you see it over here, but we'll fix that in a moment. Now let's go to our, and as you can see, it switches between when you click on it, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So now what we want is we want to go to these 3 elements and let's delete them. You can just press cut right there. And as you can see, now we have exactly what we want right here. So firstly, we want to make sure that we go to the combine widget now, so we can compile and save this for a moment. And you'll see a bunch of errors, and that's fine. Well, we're going to address all of those. But let's go to the combine, drag that up, and we want to do the same exact thing. So let me go to my combine. We're again going to want to make sure that it's not fill on screen, that it's desired on screen. And we're going to want to make sure that all of the parameters are exactly the same. So let's go to inventory border, make sure that it's anchored to the top left, make sure that the position is 0 and -30, and then 450 and 930. And then we want to have the Z order as -1, so that's good. Everything looks good here. Now let's go to the back overlay. This all looks great. If we look at the text and everything right here, we want to make sure that, let me see, we're actually going to be overriding some of this text. So what we could do is we can get rid of these because we're going to have a new one. So for the inventory background, this is why we included the combined background. So right here, we're going to change it to the combined background, and now you can see more so of what it's going to actually look like. So now we're going to make sure that we create a new text actually. So let's create a new text right here, and let's put it on background overlay. And let's make sure that we call this one combined item name. This will be a variable, of course. And just so I can know exactly what fonts and everything we use, we can also just copy all properties here and save everything, because it may crash the engine, but just paste it right here. And so now you can see we have the same exact ones. And of course, we're going to change the color. Let's copy this appearance because we want it to look like this instead. Perfect. So now we have that. We want this size and padding to be 20 and 680, and then the right will be 0 and the bottom will be 0. Now for the text, there's a couple things we want to make sure of. If you scroll down, let me go into the text. If you scroll down, you want to make sure that for font, it's not bold, it's just regular, just like so, which is good. And then we want to make sure that the font size is 20 is what I have it over there. It's Roboto 20, and I think everything else is good. Now, one thing we do want to do is we want to bind this to a variable that we have. So we need to add those variables in a moment, but for now, let's just add all of the elements, and then we'll come back and add the variables. So the next thing we want to do is we can just copy this, and we're going to call this combined item amount. Oops, one too many M's right there. So we're going to say combined item amount, and we're going to copy the properties now from this text block. So let's copy those properties and let's paste them right here. And we're just gonna change the padding right here to make it so we want it, to make it so it goes exactly where we want it to go. So let's go 20, 750, and 20, and let me see, 100. Great. And so now we're gonna want this to go all the way across right there. So you can see it looks like this. And we're again going to give this a variable, but for now, just we'll wait 1 second. And everything else should be good. Perfect. So now we're gonna do the same thing. And also this isn't item amount. This is item description. And so now we're gonna do the item amount. So we'll duplicate this again and we'll call it, oops, item amount. Great. And so now, similarly, this is going to have the same exact, oops, doesn't have the, I'll get the property settings right now. So we'll copy all the properties, make sure to save everything, and then we'll paste it right here. And then we'll paste it again right here for the item amount. Great. So now with the item amount, we're just going to change the padding again. We're going to say that the padding is 0 on the left. It's going to be 685. It's going to be 0 and 0 on the right and bottom. It's going to be on the right side right there and at the top. And then we're going to change it so that, let me make sure this is all right. It's gonna be 0.14 across the board. There we go. And it's going to be size 16 font. It's going to be left, and I'm pretty sure, let me see if I did any translations or transformations to it. I did -20 right here. That should be it. That should be exactly what it is. And now we have the elements right here. And if you want just a base text to see what it would look like, we could just name it X100. You can see that's where it would be on the screen. So great, that's exactly what we want. Now let's keep going with changing all of this to be exactly where it needs to be. So we can go to our grid overlay. And now we want to make sure we change that to be anchored again in the top left. And we want to change the position X to be 0, the position Y to be 40, and 450 and 400 remains the same for size X and size Y. Let me go down to the translation and scale, and all of this should again be the same. So I think this is good now. We can go to grid and make sure there's nothing on grid. There's nothing on grid, which is great. We'll go to inventory overlay, and this should be the last thing we have to change here. And so we're gonna make sure that this one now goes to top left as well, firstly. Secondly, we're gonna wanna make sure that the wrap combine is a different size and also the wrap overlay. But okay, so let's go to this. So firstly, the inventory overlay should be position 0. And we'll make the size Y, or position Y, 40. And then by 450 and 200, which is going to make it a bit smaller. And then we're also then, let me see if I did any translations. I did not. And then we're going to go to the Y. Yeah, we're gonna go to the wrap box combine. So right here in the wrap box inventory, we're gonna rename that to wrap box combine. And this will be a variable as well. And so now here we're gonna wanna have the same exact one. So 25, 25 on the right, just like this. And you can see we're gonna need to do a little bit of translations on the grid right here, the vertical grid, in order for it to not be as tall. So let's go to vertical grid. In the first column, we're gonna wanna change these to now be -150, -150. And we're gonna wanna change the scale to be 0.5 right here. And 0.5 by 1, 0.5 by 1, 0, 0, and of course -90. And so let's go to the second column, and I believe it's going to be the same thing throughout. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not. It's going to be -50, and then this is going to be -150. It's going to be 0.5 right here, 0.5, 0.5, 0, 0, -90. Great. Now the third column is going to be now +50, and again -150 because that's the height here. I'm gonna do 0.5. Great. And we're gonna do 1, 0, 0, -90. And lastly, that fourth column, Let's go to -150. We'll change this to 0.5. Oh yes, and the last thing we have to do is we have to get rid of this third row right here, so we can delete that, and now everything will be pushed up. So as you can see, and I don't know why this keeps resetting, but let's just do this again. Let's copy and bring this over so we can paste that, and now it keeps doing it. Okay, I might have to restart the engine, but I'll make sure to change that back. But okay, as you can see, now everything is working like how it should. And the last thing we have to do on this page is actually create a horizontal box to hold the images right here. So that's what we'll do now. Let's go into right here and let's go type in horizontal box. Let's drag that onto the overlay, the background overlay, and let's call it HB_image items. Make this a variable actually, so we can reference it later and you'll see why. And let's make sure we have the right padding and everything for this. So what we're gonna want is, we're gonna want to do left 0, top 50. Top 50. Let's make sure that it's middle and elongated, so it's right here. And we will, let me make sure, the Y transformation or Y scale is gonna be 2.5. 1, 2.5, and then 0, 0. Yep, this seems right. And then so now we're just gonna add 2 different images. So let's add an image, and we're gonna add another image. So this first image is gonna be called first combinable item, and the second one is going to be second combinable item, as you can imagine. So now we have to make sure these items are displayed correctly. So let's look at the padding and make sure that it's set up the right way. So for the first combinable item, we want the left to be 45. For the top, it will be 0, and all the other ones will be 0 as well. We want this to be horizontally aligned in the middle and vertically aligned in the middle as well. Now let's make sure this is 32 by 32. All of this is great. I think the translation and scale, the translation for the X for scale is 2.5, so it's a little bit bigger. And let me see. And for the second combinable item, I think it's going to be the same type of thing. Yes, so the X will be 2.5 right here, and we're gonna have to move it over. So the left padding is going to be 175. And let me see, it's gonna have to be horizontally aligned right here as well, just like this. And even though this doesn't look centered right here, you'll see when we actually go into the game and test it out that it actually is. And so this is what we're gonna want. Also, this font seems a little big. Let me make sure right here it's at 16 instead. And I'm about to just change these myself just so that it can stay. So let me see what the font is. It's 16. The color is 0.281. So that's what I'll do. I'll change it to 16. And the color will be 0.281 throughout. Perfect. So now let's save or compile and save. And now we have all of this set up. So now next thing we want to do is we want to create these variables so we can reference them later. So let's go into our event graph and let's create a couple of new variables. We're going to create text variables. So let's go text, and let me reference my combine just to make sure that we're doing this the right way. Okay, so what we can do is we only really need one more text variable. We'll call this combinable item amount. And these are already item names, so we can just combinable item name and then combinable item description. And we can just basically use these, which is great for us. We don't have to remake new variables. Right here, we'll bind this to combinable item name. This will be combinable item amount, and this will be combinable item description. And I realized, again, I keep putting 2 M's on this one, so I'll change that very quickly. And great, so now we have that set up as it should be, but there's still, let's see, what is this? Oh, I just have to change this to be the new updated variable name. Okay, cool. So now that's all done. And so now our w_combine, similar to our w_inventory, they should look basically the same. The canvas panel, you'll know you did it right if the canvas panel goes only around this like so. All right, so as you can see, we still have some errors after the combine and inventory are set up correctly. So let's address those right now. So the first thing we want to do is let's make sure our inventory grid is set up correctly. So we're going to want to add an image, and this will be our background image right above the switcher, and this is just going to be called BG for background. Now for this, we're going to want to make sure that it's anchored to the full screen and that it's 0 and 0. Now for the font and color and opacity, we basically just want to have a little bit of a tint just so we know we're in the menu. So let's do 0.05, and we can make these both 0, 0, 0. So now it's just a little tint just to give us that little bit of feel that we are in this screen. And also, I did this for tint, but it's actually supposed to be for color. So we can do it this way. And now this we could just keep as 1 for the tint. Great, so now that's color and opacity is what it was supposed to be. So now, I think that's everything there. We can compile and save, and we're still gonna have the errors, but we're getting closer to being done. The next thing we want is another horizontal box. And this box is actually gonna hold the thing that lets us switch between the two. So we're gonna call it HB_top bar. Great, and let's go up and let's change how this looks and the anchor point and everything like that. So the anchor point for this is on the right side, and we're gonna make the position X -537, position Y -465, and 325, and the size Y will be 40. Great, and that doesn't look that big, but you'll see in a moment it'll look pretty good for our case scenario. Great, so now the next thing is we want to get a couple of buttons. So let's grab a button and make it a child right here, and we'll call it button inventory. And we want to also drag text to that, so let's drag text as well. And so let's first customize the button to make sure it's exactly how we want it to look. So let me copy the styling I had for this as well. So the padding will be fine, there'll be nothing here. For the normal tint, we're going to want to change that to be black, like so. And rounded box, outline settings, I'm pretty sure are the basic settings, which is good. And then we're gonna go down to the tint right here, that's the same. And the pressed, I'm pretty sure I kept the same, so I think this is all good now. For the text, we're gonna want to change it to be just inventory up here, and we want it to be directly in the middle just like it is, and we want it to be Roboto light, Roboto light, just so you can see like this. And we want the size to be 24 just as it is. So this is good. Now we'll duplicate this same exact button, and we'll call this button combine, and we're just going to change the text to be combine now. And as you can see, now we have these two buttons right next to each other, and one of them is combine and one of them is inventory, which is perfect. This is exactly what we want. So now we want to make it so the switcher shows up in the correct position. So let's go to our switcher and let's start changing the anchor point for this. So it should also be on the right side, and the position X should be -600, and the position Y should be -450, and then the size should be 450, and the size Y should be 900. And as you can see, now we are in the correct area. This is exactly what we want. Now we're just gonna have to deal with some of these errors. So let's go to them and let's figure out why they're causing errors. So okay, you can see in our inventory grid. So with these errors, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to go into our W_inventory, go to the graph, and right here in the refresh inventory, we're gonna wanna hook this up a little bit differently so that it actually works the way we want. So for the inventory reference right here, it's not going to be self anymore because we're going to want to reference the inventory grid. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go off of this and get the inventory reference, which right here is inventory reference, and it should be W_inventory grid for you. This comes from our BPC_inventory component. So great, now we have this, and we want to, instead of having self, hook that up right into here. And so that will help us in that department. Now the items, everything else right here should be the exact same, which is great. So we can compile and save this. As far as this, we can actually delete this function because well, we actually have to see where it's in use, but we instead want to use the function from our inventory. So wherever we use refresh inventory, if we go to find references, well, it won't be in here. It will be in our BPC, I think, component right here. You see how it references W inventory grid. We instead want to reference the W underscore inventory. So let me go to my BPC and my other project. And if we go to the add to inventory right here, we're going to want to, instead of having it like this, we're going to want to go off of the inventory reference and get W underscore inventory, just like so. And get self, move it up here. And off of this, we're going to want to call refresh inventory, where the inventory reference will be self now, because it is W underscore inventory. So great, so now we'll hook that up just like so. That'll connect from both sides and connect into here like this. So now, this will be one of the places. We also have to see where else this is called. So we can look up in here, refresh inventory, and see where else this is called. It's called in the event graph, so we also have to change it right here. So right here, we're going to want to actually change this logic up a little bit. So we can get rid of this, get rid of this. So right after we resize, we're going to want to refresh the inventory. And now we're also going to want to refresh the combined system. So firstly, let's just refresh the inventory. So let's go off of the inventory reference, get inventory reference, and let's get W underscore inventory. And we can make this a little bit more straight like this. And we're just going to call refresh inventory, because again, we don't want to use it in our W underscore inventory grid anymore. We want to use it in just the inventory. Great. So now we have that set up. And remember, the inventory reference will be self. So we'll get a reference to self just like so, and we can hook it up just like that. Now after this, we're going to want to resize again, but this time, because this is going to be for our combined system. So right here, instead of having inventory size, we're going to make a new function or a new variable. So let's create a new variable and let's call it combined size. Now we know that our combined size is actually 8 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different grids here. So we're gonna have an 8 combined size. And again, you can change that if you'd like to, but for my case, we're gonna have 8 combined size. So let's make sure we change that to 8, compile and save. And so now this isn't going to be these items anymore because that's the items of our inventory. We're gonna have to change it to be combinable items. So let's duplicate the items right here and let's change this to combinable items. And so now this will be the combinable items that we can make. So let's set this up in a little bit, but for now, let's just change it to combinable items. And we have combined size, combinable items. So we have to make sure we change this as well to combine size. So now this is basically initializing the size for our combined section in our inventory, or in our combined inventory, I should say. And so now we need to basically make the same thing as before, but that refresh combined. So for now, I'll just create a reroute node just so we know we have to continue doing this. But for now, let's check and see how many more errors there are. So for here, the error right here is because of this refresh inventory. If we try to get rid of this, it's still being used, and you can see right here in the item underscore slot, or the W underscore item slot, sorry, we also call refresh inventory here. So similarly, we're going to want to change that to be the W underscore item or W underscore inventory logic instead of that. So we're going to want to change that instead to be a little bit different. But actually with this, we're going to want to change this logic almost entirely. But for now, let's just change this to be, instead of this, we're going to get the W underscore inventory. And we're going to want to go off of this and refresh inventory this way instead. And again, the inventory reference will be self. So since we can't call self right here inherently, what we'll do is we'll just delete this for now, just so this one error in here can be resolved. So we have to see where else it is being called. For now, we'll do is we'll just save this. In our delete logic, we're going to change also entirely because we want to make it so we can delete one item at a time, not every index of that item. So we're going to change this logic as well in a little bit, but let's stay on task for a moment. It says right here, could not find a variable named wrapbox inventory in w underscore inventory grid. So right here, we can delete this, and right here, we can delete this. We can compile and save. And you can see right here, the problem is now that this is being called. So we can compile and save this. And now if we want to delete this function, so apologies guys, I don't remember exactly where it's used other than this, but what we could do is we could just delete this and it'll say function is in use. Do you really want to delete it? We'll press yes. And so now the item grid will not have any more errors. It's basically just a parent container to hold our other widgets for our inventory and our combine. So what we'll do is now we'll save this. We'll go to our combine and we'll make sure this is right. The inventory should also be right now because it will have the inventory widget or the refresh inventory. And so now, since we deleted the logic for deleting an item in our item slot right here, we're going to change this logic. Let's actually make it so we create the new functionality for removing an item. So let's do that right now. So let's create a new one for remove from inventory, which should be the opposite of add to inventory. And we'll make this function pretty quickly. So what we want to do is we want to take in an input parameter, and this would just be s underscore item. And this is going to make it so that we can delete one item at a time instead of deleting all of the items, which I can understand is definitely something we don't want to do. So item to delete is what we'll call this parameter. Right here, we're going to go off of this and break. So let's break this. And all we really want from here is the item amount. So let's just get the item amount right here. And let's make sure that we just want to check and see if we have one of them at least. So let's see if it's greater than one. And if it is with a branch, well, that means it's a stackable item. So we want to remove just one from that stack. So what we'll do is we'll set the array element. And because we already have it in our inventory, it's already in the array and it's a stackable item. It's not the last one, so there's still gonna be more of them. And so, for example, if there's 4 of them, it's now gonna go down to 3 of them instead of just deleting all of them. So let's make sure we do this. So we're gonna want to get items, because this will be all the items from our inventory. The index, we can use the items to actually find the index. So let's use find item. Right here, this will be the item to delete, because this is how we will cross-reference where it is, and this will help us find the index where it is in our array. This item, we're going to basically decrease the amount by 1. So in doing this, what we can do is we can get the item to delete right here, and we'll just put it down a little bit, and we'll break this struct. And all we essentially want to do is just connect every single pin to a new make s underscore item. All of this should go into each other. So we'll just do it like so. Now there's one of them that should not go to one another, but we'll change that in a moment. So the ones that should not go to one another are the item amount, because right now what we want to do is we want to subtract this by 1. Because we're removing one of the items, so let's just subtract it by 1, and this will be the new item. So what we'll do is right here, we'll collapse it to nodes, just like so. And we'll call this item decreased by 1. Let's go into this, and we're gonna have to output a couple values. We're gonna wanna output s underscore item. We're gonna wanna output the item name as well, and you'll see why in a second. And we're gonna also wanna output the item amount. So let's output all of those. And let's go back now to our remove from item. And so right here, that s underscore item is going to go right here as the item, which is great. That's exactly what we want. So now after this, we're going to want to call that refresh inventory. And it doesn't have it right now. We're going to have to go off of inventory reference and get w underscore inventory, and from here is where we will call refresh inventory, and this will be off of self, just like so. And now we have this set up, and again, we're actually going to have to come back to this later, because when we start the combine functionality, we're going to need to change some of this. So we'll come back to this in a little bit later, but for now, this will be good for stackable items. And for removing non-stackable items, it's going to be very similar to what we did before, actually. So we'll come off of this. and we're essentially going to want to remove an index, and the index will be what we did before. So it'll go off of this, it'll go items. You're gonna get your items in your inventory, and we can bring it down like this, just reroute. Great. And yeah, okay, good. So now after this, we're going to want to do the same thing here to find that index, which is very nice for us. We can just copy and paste that same logic. And now after this is basically going to erase one of the slots in our inventory, which is not what we want. So we want to then resize it again. So we'll resize the array to be the size of the inventory that we have. So inventory size right here, and let's make it so it's out a little bit so it's cleaner. And this will go to the items, just like so, which is our inventory. Perfect. So let's bring it around like this. So now after this, we're going to go back up to refresh inventory, and that is essentially what we're going to do every single time we erase an item from our inventory or remove an item from our inventory. So again, this logic right here is if it's a stackable item, and this is if it's a non-stackable item or the last in a stackable item. And then we're going to refresh the inventory. So now let's go back to our item slot, and right here where we call delete item, we can actually get rid of all this logic, get out of here, and we're going to change that to just be removed from inventory. So in order to get that, we're going to have to go off of our item. So get item right here, and we're going to want to call remove from, or I guess it's not parent of this. We're going to get the first person reference, sorry. And from here, we're going to want to get bpc underscore inventory component, and hopefully we can just do like this, and off of this, just get remove from inventory now, which is perfect. And let's make it a little bit cleaner for us and bring this over, and this is going to be the item to delete. So now this logic will make it so we can delete items a whole lot easier and just one at a time. So this is another fix that we needed to do. So now if you try to run the game, you'll see that when you press the tab button, we have an inventory and a combined system. Right now we're in the inventory. And so when we press combine, nothing happens. And the reason for that is because we don't actually have any of the logic set up between the switcher to switch back and forth. Additionally, it seems when we hover over these item slots that it's not actually hovering over them. So we need to change that logic as well. It seems that the Z order is not correct. So first things first, excuse me, let's make it so we can switch back and forth. So let's go to the inventory grid, into the event graph, and for the on clicked of these buttons, so let's go, let me see where the buttons are right here. If we scroll all the way down, we can get the on clicked event. And then if we go back and do the same thing for the combine, scroll all the way down, get the on clicked event. And now we can grab this like this. So we can do set active widget index, it should be widget index. And we can also just turn off context sensitivity since this is only one thing right here. This is on the switcher. Thankfully for us, we have a switcher. So let's just bring the switcher as the target, and the index will be 1. And the reason for this is because we have it set up a very specific way. So for our switcher, we have the w underscore inventory first, then the w underscore combine. So this is technically the first, and this is the second. So if we go back, the widget index, when we press the inventory, it will switch to the inventory. So we'll set it up like this. And then we'll make it so right here, oh, sorry, I just confused you guys. This is supposed to go to combine because obviously every index starts at 0. So I'll go back and show you again just so it's not confusing. So right here, this is the 0th index technically of the switcher. This is the first index. So 0 index is the inventory and the first index is the combine. So when you're in combine, if you're clicking on inventory, you want it to go to the inventory and vice versa, obviously. So under the combine logic, when you click on the combine button, you want to show the first index because that is right here, 0 and 1. This is the 1. So we want to show the widget combine. And after this, we're going to want to go off this and set active widget right here. So we'll do this, and we're just going to reference the combine widget. So let's grab the combine widget just like so. And now this logic works exactly as intended. We're going to do the same thing, but opposite for the inventory. So we'll copy and paste it. We'll bring it over and we'll change this index to 0. Remember, it's the first thing, so the 0th index. And we're just going to change this to the inventory widget, like so. So now if we open it back up, if we go into here, you can see we could switch between them. And right now you can see there's a couple issues. For one, this isn't displaying correctly and we cannot hover over the item. So let's first fix being able to hover over the inventory items. So if we navigate to w_inventory, and if we go to the inventory overlay, this should be the first Z order. Then grid order, or grid overlay, sorry, should be the 0th index. And then the inventory border right here should be -1st index. I think that honestly will fix it. Let me just make sure. Yes, so now you can see we can go over all of the inventory slots, which is perfect. So now, right now, we're having an issue where the combined slots are not appearing. So I think the reason for this is because if you go to BBC inventory component, and if you go back to the event graph right here, we didn't refresh the combine. So we actually have to do that as well. So in order to do that, we have to go into our w_combine widget, go into graph, and we have to, instead of it being refresh inventory, we can call it initialize combine. So let's open this up, and we're essentially going to do the same type of thing, but this time instead of using items right here, we're going to be using, or actually there's a couple of differences. Firstly, we're going to want to make sure that off of this, we're going to be using combinable items. So we can go off of this, delete that, go to combinable items. We're going to want to again go, again, right here, we're going to want to get the inventory, excuse me, reference. And we're going to want to plug that in there instead of self. And we're going to want to keep the refresh slot, keep all of this. So this should all now be working. Now let's go back to right here where we put that reroute node in BPC inventory component. And we're going to want to make sure that we call combine. Remember, it's going to be off of this inventory reference. So we're going to get w_combine. And then we're going to call the initialize combine, just like so, right into here. And again, this is going to be self. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring it up, bring it around, make that go up towards self. Great. So now if we compile and save, if we go back in, we should see that now we have all of these different inventory slots, which is perfect. This is exactly what we want. Now we have combine and inventory, and they're set up correctly. All right, guys, now that's really like the meat and bones of what we are going into. Now we can really start going deeper into how to create this system. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into our s_item, and actually let's close some of these because we're not using all of them right now. Let's go into our s_item and let's start actually adding the parameters that we need to make it so we can combine any item with any other item. So let's add a new variable and let's call it item craftable. And we're just basically asking if this item is craftable. If it is, we'll check it as true. If not, we'll check it as false. Additionally, we want items to craft. So what items we need to craft, and this will just be a text array. We're gonna go based on text. So we just wanna we just want it to be text right here. We wanna change the type to array. And additionally, the last one we wanna create with us is items to craft image. And this is gonna be that cover image. So we want texture 2D right here and select object reference. Now this is great, but we have to make sure that this is set up correctly because now we changed the structure. So every single time we call that structure and we change it, we need to make sure that everything is updating the right way. So what I mean by this is if we go back into our, I think item slot logic. So for our remove from inventory, for example, right here, we want to make sure we combine these and we make sure that they're checking with each other. Additionally, in our add to inventory, we want to make sure that these are all going to each other as well. So we want item inspectable, all of this to go to one another as well. And so now that's great. We want to make sure all those go to each other, and we can move this up a little bit. Just like so, and move this down and make sure this goes right here if it needs to. Okay, so now that we did that. That's great. Now we need to actually go into our BPC inventory component, which we are right now. And we need to make sure that we update our logic. Also, this is good. I just want to make sure that we update all the places for our new struct. So our new struct is okay. This is all good. All right, that should be good, but we'll know later. I'll come back to it and I'll make sure. So in our inventory component, we want to create a new variable again. This time, we want to make sure that we add a very integral component, which is going to be our map. So this is going to be our inventory map. Okay, and this is basically going to map between the strings to the integer. So it's going to be the name of the item in our inventory to the amount that we have. And this is going to help us a lot with combining items. And it's going to help us a lot when we're tracking things in our inventory. Overall, this will make everything more efficient and less hard coded as well. So firstly, we want to be a string, like I said previously, and we're going to make sure the type is a map. And if you don't know what a map is, it basically maps one variable type to another in a key value pairing. So we want it to be a string and an integer, just like so. And we don't have to initialize anything here. We just want to make sure that we have this, and now we're going to utilize this. So how do we utilize this? So, okay, we're going to want to make sure that we change up a little bit of our functionalities to incorporate this mapping. So when we add an item to our inventory, it uses the mapping, and we remove an item from our inventory, it uses the mapping, and so on. So firstly, before we even incorporate this mapping, our add to inventory was a little bit messed up. I don't know if you guys remember this. This might need to change. I definitely needed to change this because there's instances where it deletes some of the last items in our inventory. Like what I told you guys right here, it'll delete an item, and when you add one or delete one, and it's no bueno. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change that up, and we're gonna make sure that it's all good now. So let's go to our add to inventory, and let's do all of these changes at once. Firstly, if we're adding an item to an inventory, we don't want it to only be an item that we can pick up, because we also want to add items to our inventory from when we combine items together and create new items. So what we'll do is we'll add a new parameter right here, and it's going to be s_item as the type, but the name's going to be a new item, mainly just craftable item, but you can add any item if you really want to. But okay, we're going to call this s_item, just like so, and we're going to want to do a couple things. Firstly, all of this logic is correct, but let's move some of this. So let's move this back a bit, and let's make sure we have this the right way. So firstly, off of this, instead of using this every time, let's bring this over here, and we're just going to call this as set the local item. So let's create a local variable, and let's call it L_item, and this will be the local item. And we don't want this to be this anymore. We want this to be s_item, just like so, as the type. So we can compile and save. And did I change the inventory map? No, it should be good still. Okay. Container type cleared because, okay, that should be fine. So we want to go off of this, and we basically just want to set this variable to this value. And so this also just cleans up our logic, because what we can do is right here, instead of using that, we can use L_item. But this also makes it so if this actor isn't valid, meaning there's no actor there that we picked up, that it actually, we could say on not valid, that means that we're using this new item. So let's go off of this, and let's grab this again so we can duplicate and paste and go off of not valid. And we're going to set it to this new item, because we're going to get new item right here, but I'll explain that one more time just in case it's a little confusing. So if we're using an actor, if we're picking up an item in the level, then when we add to inventory right here, this actor is going to have a value, meaning it's going to be valid, and it's going to initialize it to the item attached to that actor. Now, if we're adding an item to our inventory later on, you'll see there's not going to be an actor attached. So it's just going to be an item. So when that happens, we're going to want to make sure that off of the not valid, because there's not going to be an actor, that we attach the new item instead. This basically safeguards against this, and it makes it a lot easier for us to use this. So both of these are still going to go off and get the current index. They're both going to do that as well. So like I said previously, this L_item is going to be here now, which is great. And now off of this, we're going to want to change our stacking logic along with our not stacking logic right here that I told you we need to change. So right here, instead of using this logic, again, we're going to use the L_item logic right here. And we're going to want to make sure all this is good. Now we're going to need a little bit more space because we're going to be adding logic for our mapping. So let's drag out this comment and we can make it a little bit sharper as well, just so it's a little bit cleaner. So, okay, how does the map work? So like I said previously, the map is determined from a string and an integer. So we basically need the name of the item and we need the count that it has. So what we can do is we want to, every single time we add an item to our inventory, we also want to add it to the map so we have a constant reference. So we can add right here and let's bring it up like so. So let's clean that up. So this is the name. This is gonna be the name of the item. So what do? Well, luckily right here in our struct, we have the name right here. So we can drag this around and we can drag this guy just like so, just to make it a little bit cleaner. And bring both of those up just a teensy bit. And okay, now we have the name, so that's great. We have one step down. Let's move it over. Now we also need the item amount. So we're adding this item, so we want the new item amount, the one that we already made previously. So luckily for us, we have that amount already. We can just do that. And now this is already done. The adding to our map is complete. So after this, we're just going to connect it and it's going to call this refresh inventory. So that's great. That's already done for us. Now let's extend this side as well. And we're essentially, and also this probably doesn't need to be this big. So we'll make them hopefully the same size. We can just move all of this over and move it so it's a little bit closer and works for both sides on symmetricalness. All right, so for this logic, it's still going to be the same in terms of we're checking the space in the inventory first. And if it has enough space, then we're going to actually add it. So again, right here, this we're not going to use anymore. We're going to use the L_item. And so we're going to drag that in, connect it up, and just like that, now we're using L_item as our inserted element. Now, off of this, we're again going to want to delete this logic because again, this won't really work like this. Let's delete that logic. Let's go off of this items and let's call resize because that's actually what we need to do here. If we're deleting an item, we just want to resize it to be the size of the inventory again because that just changes everything for us and makes it a lot easier. So let's get the inventory size now. Move this over, bring this up, make it straight. Great. And now we want to add it to our map again, just like this. So we can kind of use the same logic, just bringing it down. And let's add it to our map. And now this item amount, we're going to have to take from the L_item now instead. What we'll do is we'll break this. We can get rid of this current index so if you don't need it anywhere else anymore. And all we want is the item name. So we can hide all the unconnected pins, get the item name, and bring that over to right here because we already have a cast from a text to a string. Now we also want to do that with the item count, right? Item amount, sorry. So we'll add it right here as well. And now we have two different types of information that we need. So this is perfect. This is everything that we need in order for it to be added to our map. So great. Now we have this and we can also just call that refresh. So this is perfect. Now it's added to our map on both sides of the stackable items and non-stackable items. And actually we can move this over a little bit and reduce the size of this comment. Great, so now this is done. Now we just need to handle the ending right here because it's for the most part fine, but you might see the error already, and if you do, good on you. There's something that could happen every single time if we try to destroy this actor, but it's not valid because we're using the new item and not an actor. So what we need to do is, we need to see firstly if this is valid. We need to use that is valid node. That is very handy for some of these errors. Make sure you go down to the question mark one because that's the one that will determine if it's valid or not. And if it is valid, then we want to destroy the actor. But if it's not valid, we just still want to return, just normally like we would, because we don't have any actor to destroy. So now, just like so, this should be the updated add to inventory. And hopefully you guys understand it. I'm now going to compile and save, and we need to do the same thing kind of for the remove from inventory. Even though we made the new system here, we don't have our map logic in. So let's go to our remove from inventory, and let's make sure that we include, excuse me, our map logic. So let's move this over. And all we need to do is we need to now make it so we remove this from our inventory. And that's why we added this name and value. You might have been questioning it before. So let's go off of this. So we're going to want to get our inventory map, and we're going to want to get a node called remove. This just removes it from our inventory. So let's grab this and let's remove. And all you need to remove an item from an inventory is the key, or in this case, the string of the name. So we'll go off of this and use this value, which is perfect. And now you might be thinking, okay, but isn't this for stackable items? Why would we want to remove it entirely from the map? Well, removing it entirely from the map is useful in this case because we're just going to add it right back, but add it in the form of one less of the item amount. So all we need to do is, because this is already decreasing by 1, we want to go off of this again and add it to the map again. But this time, we'll use the same value right here. We can just bring this down and make that straight, and then bring this down and make that straight. But the value is already decreased by 1 here. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want here because this is going to keep track of it for us. So let's do this and make it all straight. And now you can see it's added to the map. And right after this, we'll do the same exact logic like so. So great, we handled removing it for stackable items. Now we need to handle it for removing entirely, which is actually just this. We just want to remove it flat out and not add it back with 1 less. We can just remove it flat out. And now in this case, we can just call it from right over here. And the string name will also be right there from the item name. So I hope this makes sense. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get the hang of maps a little bit more if you're new to them. Excuse me. But yeah, this is all you need to do. And now our logic works entirely. So we can compile and save this, and now our add to and remove from logic for items will work. Great, so now the next part we want to do is we want to actually start with the combine logic. Now all of this makes it so we can do combining, but now we need to set up the combine logic. So perfectly for us, we want to go to w_item slot, and right in here is where we're going to have most of our logic. So okay, I'm going to do this a little bit slower because it's going to be a lot of different information and we need to make sure, or I hope you understand it by the end of this. So let me go to my other thing just so we have both of them and I don't make any mistakes so it doesn't confuse you guys. So, okay, perfect. Let's go to the hovered right here. And this is going to be where we're going to start making some changes to our logic. So firstly, we also don't need to show all of these. Like you can do hide unconnected and just make it all straight like that, and that kind of just cleans up a lot of how it looks. But anyways, we'll do the same here. What we want to do is we want to change our on item hovered to now accept if the item that we're hovering is in the inventory or in the combine, because you might think, okay, well, if I have an item that we want to combine, I shouldn't be able to click on that with the item selection and like heal from it because we don't have that item yet. So that means that depending on what widget we're in, we're going to want to do different things when we hover on images. So okay, let's do this for now. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So let's move this down and let's make this a bigger widget or a bigger comment, sorry. And let's move this over. So, okay, cool. What we want to do is first, we want to determine what widget are we in. So let's get the inventory reference. And from this, because this is the parent one, we can just grab the switcher. And from the switcher itself, we can determine which one is the active one by getting the active widget index. Based on the active widget index, we can just switch on enumeration. If you don't know what enumeration is, it basically makes it so we can switch based on what output we're given right here. So on what return value we're given, we can switch depending on what we get. So it can either be 0 or 1, because again, we have the 0th index or the first index, just like I said before. So if it's the 0th index, we know that this is the inventory. So because of that, we want to do all the inventory things we did right here. So that's really nice for us. We can just connect that up. This is going to be the inventory reference. But again, remember that right here, this inventory reference, we're going to now want to get the w_inventory. And we're going to want to connect that here instead. So this is another area where I forgot that we have to make changes, because this is based on the inventory grid but we want it to not be the inventory grid. We want it to be based on the inventory right here. So let's do set item name and do that. And this item name is going to come from right here. And then we're going to do the same thing for set item description right here, and not get. We want to set item description right here. Now, perfect. We have both of those, and that'll go from item description. And so now if you want to, you can go back to here and get all those variables. These two variables are not used anymore, so you can really delete them. And the reason why it says they are is because we haven't compiled and saved, I believe, because they're not used anywhere else. Oh, they are used right here. So we'll get back to that later. We'll delete all of these references later on. But okay, so let's just set this up now. So what we want to do is we want to have it like this, and this is perfect now. This is exactly what we want. We also want to show the item amount, and we'll show you why in a second. But so this is all for the inventory section, but now for the combined section, it's going to be a little different. So we're going to want to do an is valid again. And we're basically going to see, okay, is the combine valid? Is the combine widget valid? So we can replace this with get w underscore combine. Excuse me. And this value will go right in here into combine. And then we're going to say off of is valid. Okay, then we want to get the variables here. So we want to set the combinable item name, right? And then we want to set the combinable item amount and description. I think it's item description. Here it is. So off of these, now we want to set them to their corresponding values. So we know the item name will go to item name. We know the item description will go to item description. Now this item amount right here, we can use a toString, just like so. And but before we do that toString, we actually want to use an append. So before we can even use an append, we have to do a toText from a string, just like so. So we can use an append so that we can use that X. I don't know if you remember, but when we go right here, you go to combine, we have a X100 that tells you how many times it's going to be there. So we're going to use that X and then use that value right here. And so that makes it a little bit easier for us. Let's move it down here, actually. Make it a little bit cleaner and do this and move this like so. There we go. Okay, cool. So now we have this set up, and this should be everything we need here. But right here, we're gonna actually have to set the items, the item images that we have on that combined widget right here, these two items. So to do this, what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna wanna create a new function. So let's create a function and let's call it set craft images. Inside of this function, we're going to want to basically get a crafted image, or sorry, a crafted item. And off of that, it's basically just going to be an s underscore item, just like they all are. So it'd be crafted item. So off of this, all we're going to want to do is break and get the things that we need. So we're going to need the items to craft. So if you do this and go in, we're going to need the items to craft array and the items to craft images. So perfect. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to loop over, for each loop, we're going to loop over all of the items in the array that we need to craft this item, this crafted item. So for each name, because remember this is all the names, we're going to want to use our map. That's why our map is so useful. We're going to want to use our map to figure out if it exists in the mapping. So what we could do is we could do get first person reference. From a first person reference, we need the BPC inventory component. And from this, we're going to want the inventory map. So get the inventory map. Perfect. Now this is the chain that we basically need in order to get the inventory map. So with the inventory map, we want to use a tool called find to find if this element is in the array. So let's do this and set this up, make it all straight like so. And so now we can use this to find if this element is in the array. And again, this will go to the if to find out if this element is in the array or in the mapping. That's why we made the map. And so we essentially want to see, and sorry, this doesn't connect like this. We essentially want to see if it is or not. But the way to find out if it is to use a less than sign. So what this is going to do is it's going to find the name. And once it finds that name, which is the key, it's going to tell you the value. So the value, remember, is how many of that item we have. So if we have less than 1 of that item, that means that we don't have the item. If we have 0 of it, that means we don't have it. So we want to make sure we have at least 1 of them. So if we have less than 1, that means we do not have that item, right? So we're just going to do this, and we'll do this logic in a second. Now, all we want to make sure of is that we have a determination between if we do have the item versus don't have the item, because we're going to do the logic where if we have the item, it's going to be a lighter color versus if we don't have it, for example, over here, for this item, it'll be a darker color. So here's what we can do. We can go off of the inventory reference because this holds the main widget. We can then get the w_combine widget, just like so, bring that over here. And from this, we can get that horizontal box of the image items. So these hold the items, which is great for us. And we can use a handy node called getChildAt. So since we're using a for each loop, this array index will help us figure out what is happening at that specific index, So this will give us a panel widget, which is fine for this case, but we're actually going to need to cast to an image because we're going to be using images and changing how images look. So right here, we can do this, but we're going to be casting, which is fine because we're only casting twice since we only have 2 items to iterate over. So it's not that performance intensive. So off of this, we're going to want to set the brush of the image. So what we can do is we can set brush, and the in brush, we can break and split this up. The in brush is going to be the image based on this same index, which is really great for us. So all we need to do is go off of this items to craft image array, and we can say get a copy. And so this is going to get a copy at specifically the same index, which helps us a lot because we don't need to do 2 for loops. We can use the same for loop and just get a copy at that specific array index, which makes it very performance efficient for us. So perfect. Now this is great. All we need to do now is get the tint. Now I'm realizing that this one, there's multiple set brushes, I think. Yeah, so this one has tint color. So we could do the same thing here. So we want to change the tint color. Oh, here it is, sorry. So the in-brush tint right here, we can split this struct. And we can also split the image size because we're going to want it to be 40 by 40. And we're going to want no mirror, no tile. We're going to want the in-brush tint color. Let me see. Split. No, we can recombine this. Right here, this tint color, make sure it's specified color. Now right here, we're going to want to change this. Let's see what I used. I used 0.4 and I changed these to 0.083 across the board. You can see that's like a darker grayish tone. And so this will display if we don't have it. Remember, if it's less than 1 for the amount that there is, that means we do not have that item. So perfect. So now we're going to want to do the same exact thing, but if we do have an item. So let's do the same thing here. So go off of false. This will go off of this return value. And we're essentially going to do the same exact logic. So let's bring this down. And we're essentially going to want to make sure we get a copy of that same exact value right here. So we can just reroute and bring that down. And so perfect. This is all we need here. And this is basically going to make it so it appears correctly if we do have it versus if we don't have it. And we'll also set the image of that thing that we have. But before we leave, make sure that you change this to be the correct thing. So now this is going to be 1, 1, 1, and 1 because we do have that item. So we wanted to show that we have that item for the user. Perfect. So we can compile that and save. And now we did this so that right here, we can call this set craft images. And right here, this crafted image, we could just get item, which is a variable that we already had. And now this is just going to work, which is perfect for us. We're going to check that out in a little bit. So, okay, after this, our item on hovered is working correctly. This is exactly how you want it to work. Now we're gonna have to do a similar thing for item unhovered. So let's move this clicked event down and let's move this up. Let's bring this down so we can have that and we have a little bit of space to work with. Okay, so we're gonna wanna do the same exact functionality. So we can copy this and bring this down, except this is gonna be a custom event now, and we're just gonna replace it with this. Let's bring all of these nodes over and we're gonna have a very similar workflow here. So we can bring this down a little bit more even and bring this down. Okay, cool. So now off of the 0, again, we're going to do the inventory reference thing. So we're gonna, this is for specifically our inventory. So off of this inventory reference, we're going to get the w_inventory now. Perfect. And now we're going to connect this, remember, set item name, because this is actually in our other function or in our other widget, which we need to delete. But okay, so that works. And we're then going to set item description as well. So let's get rid of this and connect that right there. This will then connect to the visibility, but we're going to need to use that on both sides of the 0 and the 1. So we'll just connect it over here because it'll be connected at the end. So, okay, this is great, but remember what we did before. We have this isValid node that will determine whether it is valid first. So let's do that first, and if it is valid, then we'll do this logic right here. Nice, okay, so that's good. Now let's do the same exact thing on the bottom for the combine section. So we'll do this, and we want to make it a little bit symmetrical. So like, I think like right there or so. And so we'll just then make it so this instead is the get w_combine. Make that straighter and closer together and hook it up like so. And great. Okay, so we'll do the same exact thing. So remember, they have set combinable item name. And if you remember from last time, we're just gonna make this blank because when we unhover over it, we don't want to see what was in the last one. We want it to be blank now. Excuse me. So we're going to set combinable item amount as well, and also the description. So set description as well, and we can connect it like so. And perfect. Now we have all three. Now on top of this, we're going to want to make sure that we go into this right here, just like this, and make sure it's straight. There we go. And then we're going to want to hook this up. Oh, there is one more thing here as well. Right here, we're going to want to, because if we make all of these blank, but then the items still show up, that would look silly. So we have to also clear that. What we can do is we can also just hide it, which is a little bit easier for us. So let's get the inventory reference. Let's get the w_combine, and let's get HB image items, and let's just basically set the visibility of this to be hidden. And now this will work for us nicely. So it's hidden when we unhover, and we can connect it like this, which is really great for us. And okay, nice. So this will work as is, and so that is another thing down. So let's also now just work on the item clicked. So when we click on an item, we need to do a very similar thing again. So this time what we can do is we can unhide all these pins. We only need a couple of them. So we do it based on the item image. If the item image is valid, then we want to set the selection to be visible. But before we do this, we actually want to do a check now because it determines, it's based on if we're in the item widget or if we're in the combine widget. So same type of logic right here. Let's grab this and we'll paste it down here. And we're basically just going to say if this is not equal, excuse me, to 1. Because if we're not in the combine, if we're in the inventory, you could also say equal to inventory. It's the same exact thing here. But okay, if it's not equal to 1, then you know that we're in the inventory. So we want to go off of this and set that. And then if it is, then you know that we're in the combine. So we need to do the logic to combine items, because if we're clicking on it in our combine right here, then we want to do combining. So how do we do that? So okay, we're going to have to now make a new function to craft an item. So let's make a new function and let's call it can craft. In this function, we're going to take in another item, which will be the craftable item. So let's call it craftable item. And basically this function's whole purpose is to determine whether something is craftable or not, whether we have the items in our inventory to craft it. So let's create a local variable and let's call it can craft all items. So basically this will determine if we have all the items needed to craft. So let's bring this in, and right here, this is a local variable. I don't know why it's not popping up with a local variable, but it's okay. So what we want to do is we want to set this to true immediately based on when we first start. And let's go off of this and break this. And we can just do a little bit of this action and bring it around. Bring that over. All right, cool. So all we need from here is the items to craft names. Similar to how we did it before, we're going to actually use that same exact logic to find if we have it in there. So what we can do is we can go back to where we had it, which was in the right here. So we can copy this logic and also up here and just get rid of these. And we can copy it and actually bring it right back in, to can craft. Because what we're going to do is we're going to iterate over all the craftable items and find if we have them in our inventory. So it'll be the same exact thing. This will go in right here. So if we, right here, if this is true, then that means that we don't have it. So we can actually print that to the screen, just so we know. We can go off of this and do an append, and we can say don't have and the item name. So luckily for us, we have the item name. Also, we don't really need this array index anymore. We can do that. The item name will come from right here. So we can just wrap this around up here like so. And alternatively, it could be, if it's false, then we do have it. So let's just bring this down, and same exact logic, just we'll go into right here. And if that's the case, then we do have. And we can put a space at the end, so format's right, and that'll go into here as well. So that's really nice. That works for us. And actually, just to make it a little bit cleaner, let's bring it into down here and format it like so. Great. So now this will tell us for each item in our array. But once we're done, we want to return a node, and we want to return whether it's true or not, whether we do have all of the items. And luckily for us, we could just put in this variable that we made at the end right here. But in order for this to work every single time, we need to make sure that if we don't have it, we update it right here, that we don't have the items, because remember, we don't have them, so we don't have all the items needed to craft. So now we can compile and save this, go back to right here off of this false, and we can just put in the can craft function. Now this function will get the item that we have right here, and we can do this. And now that's really convenient for us, because now all we need to do left is off of, oops, we called it new param. Let's really call it something like have items ? And so let's compile and save that. And so now off of this, if we do have all of the items, let's make this straight. If we do have all the items, then we want to actually do the combining. So how do we do the combining? Let's create a new function and let's call it combine items. Right, and it'll be the same exact type of thing. We're just going to take in s underscore item, and this is going to be the craftable item. Okay, now this is the final home stretch. This is where all of the logic lives at the end of this. So right here, we're going to do a sequence node, so we can do the looping first, and then if it's found or not second. So okay, first things first, let's break this struct just like we always do. Now let's hide everything so we can determine what we actually want. Let's reroute these nodes right here so it's not going through things and it's a little bit cleaner. Perfect. So now what we do want is the items to craft names, because we're going to reference it in our items array. So what we want to do is we want to see, okay, we want to for each loop to loop through all of the different item names. And we want to see, okay, for each item name, let's first just honestly promote it to a local variable so that we have it. So let's promote it to a local variable and let's call it L underscore item name, and that'll work for us. And then we'll do another local variable, and this one will be a Boolean. We'll do L underscore found because we want to see if it's found or not. So we can do this and we can set found at the beginning of the iteration to be false. But it's not found yet. And you might be thinking, what do you mean by found? Well, what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be checking now for each loop or for each item in our array of items. So in our inventory. So if we get the first person reference, if we get the BPC inventory component, and then if we get the items from our inventory, if we pass that into this array, this is going to iterate through all of the different items in our inventory. Excuse me. We basically want to see out of all of those items, if the name of the item in our items to craft is equal to the name in our actual inventory. Because if it is, that means we have that item. And I hope that makes sense. Once you think about it, it's a little bit self-explanatory, but I hope that makes sense. Basically, we're going to iterate through all of the items given in items to craft. And if you're confused what that looks like, we're going to have combinable items here, and we're going to add some. And at the bottom of some of our combinable items, we're going to add right here the item names to craft whatever item this is. So it's going to iterate through all of the names to craft those items, and it's going to say, okay, ideally there would be 2 items because we have 2 on our slot right here, but out of all of those items, is that name equal to the name of one of the items in our inventory? And if it is, that means that we do have that item. It means that we do have that item in our inventory. So what do we want to do? We're going to be using that item and another item to craft our combinable item. So we want to remove this item. So what we can do is we can again use this, bring it over, and we'll call remove from inventory, that function we made earlier, off of this true. And so all we're going to do is we're going to grab the item that we're currently iterating over, and if it equals it, then that means we have it in our inventory. And so we want to remove it from our inventory in order to craft this new item. So just so we can really make sure we understand this part, I'll just add a little comment right here, or a little string so it comes up on the screen. And it's basically just going to say, let's just append, so we can add text right before it. We'll say removed, and then we'll add the item name. And thankfully for us, that's right here. You can just add that item name, and instead of dragging over, actually, let's just get L underscore item name, and then convert it from a text to a string. Just like this. Perfect. Good. So now we're going to display all the items that we remove when we have to remove items. And at the very end, we can just set our found to be true because we found that item, which is perfect. Now, that is the main chunk. Now we just have to do the ending piece just to make sure that it all works. So since we found these items now, we want to say, okay, if we found those items, so if we did find all the items needed, Then we want to add to inventory, and again, we need right here. We want to add to inventory the craftable item because we have everything. So we removed it from our inventory. Now we just want to add to inventory the new item that we just crafted. So again, we don't have an actor here because we're not picking up anything, but we have a new item, which is going to be the craftable item from right here that we're passing in, which is very convenient for us. That's why we had to change the add to inventory logic in order to work for that. Now, after this, we can maybe play a sound so we know when we're crafting an item and it's very apparent for us. And then what else? Maybe we can add a little string on the screen so that it says added crafted item. Great, so now that works. And just to make it so it's a little bit clearer, I'll just add a little sound real quick. We can do, on my other version, I added the combine sound. So we'll do the same one. So we'll go back to first person, save everything, just so make sure you save all of your progress because this was a long video. There's a lot that goes into it. Let's go first person, let's go audio, and let's make a new folder called inventory. And right in here, we can just drag and drop that one inventory. But yeah, here's the sound. So we'll go in and we'll set that up just like so. And now all of our logic should be working. Let's go to our event graph. And if this is true that we can craft it, then we want to do the combine function that we made. So hold on one second. Let me go back in my logic over here. Okay, so cool. So we'll just want to do combine items because now we know that if we can craft it, we should just combine because they clicked on it, they want to craft it. So again, we'll grab the item passed in, the get item. And if they can't, we could just print something to the screen saying like, you don't have all items needed to craft. And just like that, we have the logic needed to display everything we need. Now, one last thing, let's bring this over and let's do the, let's bring this over as well. And let's do the same exact thing for right up here for our combine event. So we can bring that over and do this and bring this comment over and just bring that part up top instead. So now this logic will be working. But in order for us to even craft anything, we need to make sure we set it up in our BPC inventory component, our craftable items. Here are some of the craftable items I came up with, and of course you can add your own. We'll do a first aid medkit. We'll do, I have a little description here that I think I got from Resident Evil itself, but you can do whatever description you would like. We will make it stackable. It's 1 at least. And right here, what's cool about this is we don't even need a mesh because who's to say we're actually going to be picking up this item? But you can always have one if you want to, but we don't need one. All we need is t_medkit, which we imported earlier at the very beginning. And this is going to be a healable item and it's going to be 30 health amount. We don't have to make it inspectable if we don't want to because we don't have a mesh for it. So, and now here's the really juicy part that you need to make sure you understand so that this inventory system works for you. So let's add 2 items needed to craft this item. And the way that it works is, so let's say you need herb and you need a chem fluid. Let's say you need those 2. So now with this in mind, you want to make sure that the items to craft is in the same order. You want to do the item background as the herb first, and then item background as the chem fluid second. And that makes it so these orders are the exact same. So, okay, cool. So we have 1 item now. Let's add another craftable item. Let's add another one and we can make it something like gunpowder. Or sorry, not gunpowder, handgun ammo. Handgun ammo. And if you've made it this far in the tutorial, thank you for watching, of course. But also, let me know if you guys do want a like gun system tutorial. Because that could definitely be done in the future if that's something you guys would want in the future. Okay, a standard 9mm clip of ammunition, for example. Let's make it stackable. Let's make it so we get 30 bullets each time. We won't have a mesh again. And let's just make the item image t_handgun ammo, which is great. It's not a healable item. Let's make it so it's not inspectable because we don't have a mesh for it. And I don't know if we did this before, but make sure that you have this as craftable. It has to be a craftable image. That's very important. And right here, it has to be a craftable image again. And let's make sure that we do the same things again. So you also make sure you spell the names of the item correctly, because if you don't, then all the logic will not work. That it's dependent on the names being spelled correctly. So double check if you have any errors that the names of your items are spelled exactly how they're supposed to be. So let's do gunpowder and chem fluid for this. And let's do item background for gunpowder first, because that's the first one here, the 0 index, 0 index. And item background chem fluid right here as the second one. So now perfect, we can start doing some testing to figure out what are potential issues. So let's go in, and firstly, let's make sure that we have them showing up, and we do. You can see there's a couple things. So for one, right here at the bottom, that text isn't wrapping, and also the items are not showing back up. So okay, let's address one of those at a time. Let's figure out why the items are not wrapping. Of course, so if you go to inventory, if you go to combine, right here to the description, you wanna make sure you scroll down to where it says auto wrap text, and you wanna make sure that's checked. Additionally, we need to figure out why these two aren't showing up back when we hover back over it, and I'm sure in the hover event, we can see why that's happening. So right here in set craft images, this function, there must be an issue with it, and I'll figure that out right now. Oh, I see the issue here as well. So the reason for this is because at the beginning, we want to make sure that it's always set to be visible by default. So what we can do is we can go back to, well, actually we could just do it here instead. So all you need to do is just get the inventory reference. Off of this, get the w_combine. And then off of this, get HB image items, and make sure that their set visibility is to be visible as soon as you start. And that will make it so by default you can see it. And now that should now be working. So if we go in and look, you can see now, no matter what it is, it says we don't have it in our inventory, and that's because of the fact that we do not have that item right now. So great, so now let's actually put in some items into the world so that we can see if it is working correctly. So let's go to first person, let's go to inventory, or not inventory, sorry, blueprints, items, and let's add some of these items. So let's add an herb, and let's add a chem fluid, both of them right here. Now these two together should let us craft the other item. So let's go to it and let's pick it up. And we have it in our inventory, and that works. And oh, you can see one issue right now is that it's going through that button right there. And I know how to fix that. We can fix that in a moment. And let's grab this as well. And you can see we have both of these. So if we go to combine, and if we click on this, you can see that we heard the sound and it output a lot of information over here. And you can see that now we have one of the first aid medkit and two of the others are gone, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted, and it worked exactly how we wanted it to. Now again, you can see if I picked up just one of these, and if I went here, you can see that it let me make this bigger, sorry. You can see that on the right, you can see we have the chem fluid, but we don't have the herb. And if we go back in, now you can see we have the herb and we have the chem fluid. So that works perfect. You can also see for this one, we have the chem fluid, but we don't have the gunpowder. So that is great. That shows that it all works, which is exactly what we want. Now, let's make it so when we go over when we click on it, it actually maybe disappears with the top bar. So it's a little bit cleaner for us. So right here for item clicked, we need to get the inventory reference, and then we need to get the HB top bar, I think it's called, HB top bar, Let me see right now, maybe we didn't set that to be a variable? HB top bar, oh, it's not a variable. Okay, we'll make sure that's a variable right there. And let's go back and let's get HB top bar. And off of this, we just want to set the visibility to be hidden when we select something, because that'll make it so it's a lot easier for us. But we also want it to show back up when we are done. So I think off of this unhovered right at the end, let's just make it so it shows back up as visible. And I think now that will do the trick for us. Let's just make sure. Before we go back in, I'll also add gunpowder. and we can do a little bit of testing. Oops, this is very small gunpowder, so maybe the size, you can make it go up a little bit. Maybe the item scale, go to like 0.2 and add that across. Great. And so now we have that, and bring that down. All right, cool. So now let's add a couple more chem fluid so we can make that as well. And all right, let's go in and let's test it. So if we go over, and if I pick up a gunpowder and a chem fluid, I have gunpowder and chem fluid. And if I click on this, now you can see, let's make this a little bit bigger. Right here, I can click on this and that top bar will go away, which is nice. So then we can do all we want with this. Click on this, same thing. And now if we go to combine, we have the items needed for ammunition. If we click on it, we have the ammo, and we can also do the same thing with a med kit. And if we go back to our inventory, you can see we have the med kit and the ammo, which is really nice. Now, one thing also to check is, let's see if we do 2 things of ammo if the ammo stacks. So let's add this and let's do ammo, and let's do it again and add ammo again. And we have 2 things of 30, and I think that's because 30 is the maximum amount that we can have. But this is perfect, this still works. You can always just change the maximum amount that you would like. So great, this works perfectly, and you can see now we also have this herb. If we wanted to, we could use it to heal us, but we are at full health, so we can also heal or hurt ourselves and then use it. And if we wanted to, we can also hurt ourselves and then use the herb and use the chem fluid, combine them, and then go back to our inventory and use this to heal us 30 because that's what we set it as. So you can see there's infinite possibilities with this system and this combined system and all of it. If we wanted to, we can even use both of these to, I don't know, make an herb or something like that and test that out as well. But that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching, and if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and let me know what videos you guys like to see in the future. Additionally, if you guys want all of these assets, like every single one that I've ever made, as well as this long video, all the systems in it and everything like that, and the inventory system and the walking system, the animations, all the door system, the pushing things, whatever it is, the inspect, the read note, whatever it is, it will all be on my Patreon for you to download and for you to have. You can use it in any project you would like. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys. Bye.